Alrighty, hello. So first, thank you for choosing to watch my video. Today, I will be presenting a mysterious journey where I will be covering the Sapiens article, A Journey of Interspecies Surprises by Dr. Matthew Robert Bennett and Dr. Sally Christine Reynolds. So to give proper credit to the original authors, Dr. Matthew Robert Bennett is a professor of environmental and geographical sciences, and Dr. Sally Christine Reynolds is a mammalian paleontologist working on African Pliocene fauna to understand hominin paleoecology. Both of them do a lot of work on ancient humans during the Paleolithic period, and both of them are leaders in their field. Dr. Bennett is an author, and Dr. Sally Christine Reynolds is a senior lecturer at her university. Both of them work at Bournemouth University. So that just sort of gives the article context and proper credit. Alrighty, so getting into what they discovered, the voyage. Let me kind of move myself up here. Alrighty, so the journey would have taken place around 11,550 years ago to 13,000 years ago, so landing it around the end of the Paleolithic period. So the Paleolithic period ended about 12,000 years ago, so this either would have occurred right at the end of it or a little bit after. This also occurred at the very end of the last ice age. Something else to point out is that this was discovered in a playa in White Sands National Park, New Mexico. Okay. In a playa, which is known as a dried-up riverbed. In this case, archaeologists looked at the site itself and noticed that because of the conditions, if a bad storm passed over, it would have made this playa really muddy, really heavy, easy to sink into. And thus, their big discovery is they discovered about a mile-long path of human footprints of someone who went from point A to point B, and then a few hours later went from point B back to point A. They also noticed that there were predator tracks of species such as saber-toothed cats, also prey such as mammoths, and also that this Voyager was carrying a strange package. So, what this article aims to consider is what this tells us about ancient Paleolithic people through the perspective of archaeology, so how they would have developed, and also indications of human complexity. It also goes into how humans of the Paleolithic period interacted with the fauna of the time. Alrighty. So, speaking of a strange package, the strange package is shown in this middle photo. There's these two tiny footprints of what would have been a little Paleolithic baby, a child that would have been no more than 2 years old based off of the size of these footprints. So these footprints, they're really adorable. That's what drew me to this article in the first place. And what's very interesting about this strange package is that the person brought it from point A to point B, but not necessarily from point B to point A. There's no evidence of this child returning. So this has left archaeologists with a lot of questions of what was this woman doing? This is indicated on the left picture where we see the path going outward and a path going inward. Um, so what they could notice is that what this tells us, what these photos can tell us about ancient humans, is that if we look to the far left, that this was somebody who knew how to get from point A to point B. So this indicates, in terms of human development and complexity, social organization. Whoever made this journey knew where they were going. They knew how to get there. They were traveling alone, and they were traveling with a baby. So this is someone who's very vulnerable. So they obviously knew that on the other end, they were going to face a friendly reception. And considering that they stayed for a few hours before making their journey back again by themselves, clearly their journey was successful, as far as archaeologists can tell. But another thing that's interesting about this path is that the person makes the journey outward, and then parallel, we can see the same journey coming back. So this indicates that this person followed their own tracks. So this indicates human complexity because it shows abstract thought. It shows someone with a great memory. It shows somebody with problem solving skills, someone who thought, okay, I know how to get from point A to point B, but how can I make the journey back safer? I know I can follow my own tracks because that was a successful journey, so I'm probably going to be pretty successful on the way back. Um, and then they're able to sort of maybe see what predators might have been around as well. So this really is the closest that we may ever get to a video of the Paleolithic period, because not only are we able to just see some tracks, but we're also able to have an indication to the thought process of the person making this journey. Um, the discovery of this woman traveling with this little baby um, is also really impressive because it shows how it might have affected the footprints and it might have affected the journey. So, for example, they can tell by the foot depth that whoever was making this journey, they had a load to carry. So these footprints, they were probably switching the child to the other hip, maybe letting it walk around for a little bit in the mud. Um, but they also noticed that because of the depth of the footprints, that these two must have been caught in a storm, that it was really muddy, and so their feet were sinking even deeper. And so these footprints are much deeper, their steps were much heavier. And so this was a very perilous journey. This was somebody who was very vulnerable. So it's good to know that back in that time there was social organization, there was people who were able to communicate with each other and able to trust the other to make these kind of voyages. So what does this tell us about the actual Voyager? The Voyager. Moving myself over here. Alrighty, so looking at the size of the tracks, they indicate that the traveler was most likely a woman. There was evidence that it could have been an adolescent boy as well. They do recognize that younger boys also have smaller feet, but because it was the size of the footprint and this was a woman carrying it, there's a child involved, and because this was probably an adult who was by themselves, the belief is that this would have been a woman. Um, Archaeologists compare the tracks on the trip to the location and the journey back. They noticed that on the way out, these tracks were a lot deeper. They had a banana shape indicating um, foot slippage. So somebody's carrying this baby. It's a load. It's taxing. Um, but also the size of the child footprints indicate that this was most likely a 2-year-old or younger. So just going back to this idea that these were people who were very vulnerable. It also says at the bottom, it might be cut off by my own computer. Um, so apologies for that if that is happening. But it says that the woman is walking roughly 1 mile per hour. So in the actual article, it says 1.7 kilometers per second. Um, sorry, 1 mile per second. So I translated that to 1 mile per second, or converted that. So this is very fast. This is someone who's making a very fast journey. So a woman who's clearly not like excited to make this journey, but she was ready to do it. She was ready to strap that child on and make her trek. So this is a very interesting find about Paleolithic people. So these are people who are, again, socially organized, problem solvers. They have a good memory, and they're starting to act very human compared to how we act today. So they're very similar to how humans behave today in a lot of ways. So we're seeing that development of humanity and complexity of humanity over time. All right, so looking at feet scans, we can see the blue at the bottom balls of the person's feet and the banana shape. So again, just sort of reiterating that this was a load. This was a very harsh walk. This was very harsh conditions. These were very resilient people. These were people who were, um, sorry about that. They were people who were very, um, probably very hardworking people, to be honest. Alrighty, so also going into another question of this article was, how did the people react to the um, megafauna? So that's what the header of the title is megafauna. So a direct quote from the article is tracks of mammoths, giant sloths, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, bison, and camels. So these were species that were also found in the playa. So more than just human tracks were discovered. Humans hunted many of these animals, but is there more? So what's also interesting about these tracks was there were two species in particular that archaeologists believe interacted with the um, woman's tracks between when she made her journey and so after she made her journey and before she returned. and this was a giant sloth and a mammoth. What's interesting is that the giant sloth tracks were indicating an animal standing up on its hind legs, messing around with the tracks, probably sniffing them, looking around, very aware of human presence, um, and very ready to defend itself. While the mammoth couldn't really care less, just sort of walked right over the tracks, not really paying much mind to um, the woman's tracks. So it says on the left that research yet to be published tells of children playing in puddles formed in giant sloth tracks and jumping between mammoth tracks. So as more research is coming out, archaeologists are starting to find that maybe humans had a much deeper relationship with Paleolithic fauna than just hunter prey. Um, they might have indirectly been interacting with each other in very positive ways, but also that some species, maybe the giant sloth was hunted far more than the woolly mammoth. Maybe giant sloths were um, just generally much easier to kill, so they adapted to be much more aware of their surroundings. While mammoths, while they were still hunted, maybe didn't have to worry about it too much. They sort of just went on about their day. This also could just indicate the behavior of these species. Maybe giant sloths in general were just common prey, so they just learned how to survive. While mammoths, again with their bigger size, just didn't have to worry about it. So they sort of adapted to relax. Alrighty, and so here are some images of these Paleolithic creatures. As you can see, the giant sloth, very formidable. It has these Wolverine-like claws. It's very big, but again, it's a sloth. So humans often in hunting groups were able to hunt it and kill it. Same with the mammoth. So it is a very interesting find that giant sloths seem to have adapted to be much more ready to defend themselves than mammoths. It is very interesting in indicating how humans and fauna might have interacted. Alrighty, so this is just a painting demonstrating our very brave woman making her journey. Um, this really is one of the closest things we will ever get to a video of the Paleolithic period. This shows people who were complex thinkers. They were abstract thinkers. They had social organization. They interacted with their fauna in various ways. And it really just paints a beautiful image of what our ancient ancestors might have been doing and how they're probably a lot more like us than we think. Thank you so much for watching this video and have a good one.